All right, and so a man who needs no introduction to this crowd, Derrick, Jensen, we're very happy to welcome you back to Extinction Radio today. How are you?
Oh, thank you. I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. I was wondering what you've been up to lately. I see that you've got a new book coming out, Anarchism, and what is the full title of that book again? Let's see. Anarchism and the Politics of Violation. That's quite enticing. I was wondering if you could give us an update about what you've been up to and a little bit about this new book, and then maybe we could move to a few questions. Does that sound good?
Sounds great. Right. And the way book publishing goes is it takes a long time for a book to get out. So by the time I finish a book, like I have another couple books in the can now ready to go out too. I'm just putting the finishing touches on a book called Bright Green Lies, which is about how technology won't save us. And I've also got a book about rape culture that is pretty much ready to go. And then so Anarchism and the Politics of Violation is going to come out this fall, and it's really about a war that has been going on for the soul of anarchism for a couple thousand years. And it's between those who understand that governments exist primarily to serve those in power. It's, for example, when I used to do a lot of talks, I would routinely ask the audience, do you believe that governments take better care of corporations or human beings? And nobody ever said human beings. Everybody understands that governments, really serve as sort of muscle for economic interests. And that's a primary function. So on one hand, you have a lot of people who have that fundamental understanding. And then on the other hand, I know this sounds crazy, but there are real problems with this going back a couple thousand years in anarchism. You have, on the other hand, you have people who believe that just because those in power make laws, therefore all social restrictions on your behavior are not acceptable, and we must do away with all social restrictions, which is how you can end up with the magazine Anarchy, a journal of Desire Armed, putting out entire issues devoted to promoting pedophilia. It ends up completely nuts, and this is a long problem in anarchism. There's a great line by Kropotkin talking about these anarchists called, Kropotkin is like this great anarchist. He lived about, let's call it 100 years ago, and he wrote many very good books on anarchism, and wrote many very good pieces on anarchism. He was very good. And at one point, he's talking about this group of anarchists called the illegalists. And the illegalists were anarchists who basically believed that because property is theft, Therefore, it is acceptable for them to steal anything they want from anybody they want. And, Kropotkin wrote this great line about how there are a lot of young comrades who get sort of persuaded to go the wrong direction by the illegalists' apparent anarchist logic, and basically everybody else just gets turned off to all anarchist rhetoric because they're so vile. I mean, not only were they stealing, they were also just killing people, including other anarchists who disagreed with them. And so you have, and this goes all the way back to Diogenes, who's probably the second Western anarchist. And Diogenes was this guy in ancient Greece who was, he was brilliant in some ways. He was called Diogenes the dog. And one reason for that is because one day he saw a dog, other reasons too. One day he saw a dog lapping up water from a stream, and he realized he would no longer have to carry a cup, because he realized that our possessions, we don't possess our possessions, but they possess us, which is brilliant. It's like we have to work so that we can own a car. We have to work so we can own a house. We have to work. We have to do all these things to take care of our possessions. In many ways, they do possess us. It's brilliant. And he's known for a couple anecdotes of his I love. One of them is that he was supposedly sunbathing on a hillside, and Alexander the Great came up to him and said, if I could be anybody else in this empire, I would be you. So I'll give you whatever you want. And Diogenes said, you're kind of standing in the sun. Could you move out of the way? I just love that. And another great story about him is that he was one day washing vegetables in a stream, and this other Greek philosopher who was known for sucking up to those in power came up to him and said, if you would learn how to suck up to those in power, you wouldn't have to wash vegetables. And Diogenes said to him, well, if you would learn to wash vegetables, you wouldn't have to suck up to those in power. So he's great on one level. But on another level, he supposedly went to the oracle at Delphi, and the oracle told him to deface currency. And what he took that to mean is he would violate every social rule. And so he would masturbate in the public market, and he would defecate in the public theater. And no one was going to tell him what he could and couldn't do. And so he was this mix of very smart stuff and also stuff that is, he would violate for the sake of violation. His point was to transgress all social norms. And that's the problem, is that you have some strains of anarchism that have this long tradition of fighting for community against empire. And that's wonderful. And then you also have these strains of anarchism that have long traditions of violating every social norm, such that you can have, like I said, anarchists who promote pedophilia, or anarchists who promote all sorts of other. There was this one anarchist who said that in order to basically bring down this terrible culture, you have to be a repulsive, perverted freak. It's actually, no, you don't. And so that's what that book is about, is the struggle between those two understandings of anarchism.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the problems is that latter strain, which is based on violating all social norms, is by definition anti-communal. If you're violating all social norms, then you are, by definition, destroying community. And also, it's just really sociopathological that if you believe that I am all in favor of asking what social norms we should keep and what social norms we should get rid of. But there is this sort of black and white thinking that can then lead to, a couple of years ago, I was doing a talk, and I was talking about how the rules are primarily set up by and for the wealthy. And I said, that doesn't mean I have a problem against laws against rape, and there were male anarchists and female anarchists too, actually, who got really upset at that. and who are freaking out because I said I don't have a problem with laws against rape. And that's the sort of insanity that this can lead you to. The second part of it. And it's part of it's there are some sophisticated anarchists who will say, look, anarchism is not about simply breaking laws. Anarchism is about changing society such that we no longer need those laws. I would be all in favor of getting rid of laws against rape if we had a society such that it was inconceivable for men to rape. But as long as you have this current society where men act in these ways against women, then we need ways to stop that. And that's the conflict right there.
Well, it would seem to me that in order to get to that place in society that you would have to have sort of a transformation on a mass consciousness level. I mean, you know, the individual lowest common denominator would have to be elevated. Do you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. And in the meantime, we need to do whatever it takes to make it so that men don't rape women. And then in the long run, of course, I mean, it's like, this is something that has gotten me in trouble with that brand of anarchists for more than a decade now, is that I actually don't care. What I care about is what happens in the real world. I don't care if we sue under the Endangered Species Act or if we stop it in some other way. All I care about is that there's more salmon in the stream every year. I don't care how it happens. So for me, real world effects of actions are always more important than ideology. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And yes, that would require, it's the same with stopping the murder of the planet, would require a mass transformation of consciousness too.
Yeah, I mean, everything is kind of pointing to that. I mean,
right.
We do have some questions from the Near-Term Human Extinction Support Group, if you have a few minutes.
Of course.
We have one question from Raphael Suvari, and what Raphael says, and he's a rather younger person, what can students in the university do today in the coming years to prepare for the world we're going to live in? Newer generations have been more and more aware of the catastrophic state of the planet, but mostly feel that there's nothing that they can do. I hope that we can get an opinion from you since you have a better understanding of the coming challenges.
Well, so I'm going to ask you a question first, and then answer this however is appropriate. When you say prepare, when he said prepare, do you think he meant personally or socially?
I mean, it's hard to say. I think he might have meant both, but my take on that question was personally. I mean, people are feeling, because they're coming to understand the demise of the biosphere and the consequences of that, they're coming to understand this in a personal way. And there's a lot of personal fear. A question that people ask me a lot, and I never have an answer for them. They always say, how long, how long? And so, you know, that comes from a very personal state. So we're very activated on the personal level right now. But I think socially, you know, this is also a concept, I wouldn't say whose time has come, but certainly it's a concept that's taking hold more in popular culture, even though there's still media blackout. You know, the understanding of the consequences of the Arctic melting it's kind of getting into the common fabric. Do you agree with that?
Yes. And I think, for example, that's one reason we see a lot more zombie movies. And, you know, we see, I mean,
Hollywood is always just a little bit in advance of popular culture. They kind of seem to have like some sort of psychic, you know, foresight.
Right. Well, it's really interesting. You know, Soylent Green from 1960, whatever, was the reason that they were required, that they went the direction they did in that movie. I don't want to do spoilers for people who haven't seen it.
Well, if you haven't seen it yet, you better go see it. It's pretty amazing. I mean,
yeah. And the reason that the Soylent Green is happening the way it is because of global warming. So they were right on that one.
Yeah, they were. Well,
Anyways,
we've been looking at this, I mean, you look, Paul Ehrlich wrote The Population Bomb in 1968, and then you've got, Limits to Growth in 1972 or something like that. This is a long time ago. I mean, looking at this problem for like 50 years, and we haven't made a whole lot of progress, but it does seem to be penetrating into the social culture a little bit.
well, you've got further back, you've got Lewis Mumford. You have a couple hundred years ago, you've got Tecumseh, the Shawnee Indian. You've got his brother Chicksika saying that the whole white race is a monster and what it eats is land. And
It's true.
you've got, I just saw this the other day, that there was this Christian, I believe Christian Roman philosopher, Tertullian. Tertullian was the guy's name. He, I don't know if he's a Christian. Anyway, this guy a long time ago, who was saying that, the fields don't support people the way they used to.
Mm-hmm.
And you see this, thousands of years ago, you see, and then there was this, God, who was it? One of the Roman philosophers put language into a probably fictional Celtic warrior saying, the Romans destroy the land wherever they go. And so, I mean, this is not new information. Anyway, so back to the questions. How we prepare on a personal level, and I'm sure this is going to disappoint a lot of people, but I am fundamentally conservative. And what I mean by that is not socially conservative so much as one of the reasons that I'm an environmentalist. Yes, salmon are wonderful and beautiful and they should live for their own reasons, but also it just seems remarkably stupid to me to kill off salmon when someday somebody might want to eat them. And it just seems just remarkably stupid to do any of the stuff we're doing. Just destroying the oceans just seems stupid to me. It seems, I am conservative in terms of, I believe that you should keep one's options open and one should not prematurely commit to any circumstance. And so when it comes to, when I was a junior in college, I really wanted to drop out. And my mom said one of the smartest things anybody's ever said to me, which is, do you want to go the rest of your life saying you have 3 years toward a degree in physics, or do you want to go the rest of your life saying you have a degree in physics? And one of the reasons that I was able to be very courageous vocationally after college and become a beekeeper and live with, very impoverished lifestyle while I was trying to learn how to write, is that at any time, if I would have given up on that, I could have gone and gotten a job starting at 35 or 40 or 50K in engineering. I could have done it overnight. And there's a big difference between that, having that safety net, and having a safety net of, I can go get a job at McDonald's. That allowed me to be incredibly courageous. So it wasn't even courageous because I had a safety net. And so, I'm not saying that the person that Raphael get a degree in engineering. What I'm saying is keep your options open. And I would never suggest that because society may collapse in the next 3 years, that you shouldn't bother to get a college degree. Because I don't want for somebody to not get a college degree because Derrick says so, and then 3 years later, society is still trundling on, and they could have had better opportunities. So that on the non-political, personal level, I just believe it's really, really important to keep your options open, and to get a degree in whatever you want to get a degree in, and just do, prepare for society to collapse, but but presume it's not going to. I mean, this culture has been much more resilient than most of us would have hoped. Mm-hmm. And so on the personal level, just do what you're going to do. And on the social level, because there are some questions that when people write to me to ask, so what should I do about the murder of the planet? I can't tell them what to do. And the reason I can't tell them what to do is because I don't know who they are. And there are so many people who have said to me, gosh, Derrick, you need to stop writing and you need to start organizing. And it's like, I'm a terrible organizer. I can't even organize my pens. And then in addition, I am a remarkable introvert. I don't, like, organizers have to talk to people. And I can't do that. I mean, this is an interview. This is a different thing. This is Derrick Jensen TM. This is not, I remember once I was working with this environmental organization, just doing a phone tree to invite people to a dinner that the organization was having. So it's not even anything bad. You have to call all the members of the organization. And I spent the entire evening dialing 6 numbers of a 7-number phone number. And I couldn't dial the last number because I was too terrified to actually talk to somebody I don't know.
I have to tell you, I'm exactly the same way. Well, you know, you have to lead with your strength, and, you know, not everybody's meant to do everything. And I think that a lot of times people who do, you know, the deep thinking and the philosophy and the kind of heavy lifting with mental infrastructure and philosophic infrastructure and visionary work are not really cut of the same cloth to do that. And I just don't think everybody should be an organizer. I'm certainly not an organizer. I would be terrified to go to an organizing event, but I could talk like this all day long. So, you know, you have to lead with your strength and what you're made of. So, you know, clearly it's not really meant for you.
Yeah, exactly. I was talking to a friend one day, and I said to the friend, so what are you going to do this afternoon? She said, oh, I don't know. Don't have much to do, so I think I'm going to go stand outside Walmart and leaflet. I was like, are you crazy? I mean, I'm glad she did it. That's wonderful work, but that would terrify me. Okay, so whenever people do ask me what they should do, I always give them a few answers. The first one is, what do you love? Because no matter what you love, it's under assault. So do you love frogs? I was just talking to somebody the other day who is completely, totally in love with freshwater mussels, mollusks, clams. And she said, I used to work with amphibians, and I love them, but I really love clams. And clams are completely getting hammered. Clams are freshwater species in North America have an extinction rate about 1,000 times higher than land species. And so if you love mussels, defend them. If you love a place, before we started recording this, you and I were talking about some land that is being destroyed. If you love a place, then defend it. If you love women, like I have this friend who used to run a battered women's program for the state of New York, and now she acts as a court advocate. And she's wonderful. Every man she sees, she says, what will it take for men to stop beating on women? You get in a taxi cab with her, she'll say, can you take me to Central Park? And by the way, what's going to take to stop men stop beating on women? Do not ever get on the subway with this woman. She's absolutely insatiable. And so I would never ask her, oh, you have to work on salmon issues, because the issue that really drives her is men's violence against women. So what I would suggest, if we presume that Raphael is of college age, so if he's 20, 21, he's not a returning student, I would say that your job over the next 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, is to figure out what it is. You have 3 jobs. One of your jobs is to figure out what it is you love. Do you love salmon? Do you love prairie dogs? Do you love a specific place? Do you love trees? Do you love fungi? Do you love free speech? You know, all of these things are under assault. So find what you love and defend it. That's how I sign copies of Endgame Volume 1, is find what you love, defend your beloved. And so that's the first thing, find what you love. And the second thing is figure out what you love to do. And I love the language, instead of saying figure out what you love to do, instead say figure out what you get off on doing. And I like that better, because if I say what do you love to do, it's like, oh, walks along the beach and sitting in front of a fire. It's like a personals ad, you know? But if you say what do you get off on doing, that's a different thing. Like what I get off on doing is figuring out the relationship between perceived entitlement, exploitation, and atrocity. I've essentially condemned myself to a life of homework. And I get off on doing that. That's what really thrills me. And so find what it is that really you just totally get off on doing. I was trying to protect some forest area one time. I was working with this wetland specialist. And he would dig in the soil, and he'd rub the soil between his fingertips, and then he would compare the color of the soil to a chart. And if the soil was a certain color, it's probably more likely wetland soil, has a higher level of protection. And as he's doing this, I say to him, do you get off on doing this? He's like, oh yeah, this is my second favorite thing to do in the world after playing with my dogs. And it's like, that's great because I would hate this. Or another time I was working with this attorney and, you know, I love writing, but I love writing my stuff. I write the world's worst press releases. They're just dreadful. And this attorney, I was writing some legal stuff with her. And have you ever written any legal stuff? It's just horrible. It's awful.
Horribly dry. But the thing is, you have to lead with your passion. And what you're saying here is that in every single instance, these people are leading with their passion, and that's why they're, you know, successful. I mean, you know, for one person, you know, it's like horrible, like you're telling, you know, legalese, you know, you'd rather, you know, probably do anything than do that. And then this other person, for some reason, it ignites their passion. And that's what you have to find. You have to find where's your energy leading, find out who you are, find out what is your strength and what really turns you on, and then go with that. And no matter what's happening in the world, at least you're doing the correct thing.
Yes, absolutely. And then that leads to the third thing, which is a question that a friend of mine taught me years ago, which is, what are the largest, most pressing problems you can help to solve using the gifts that are unique to you and all the universe? And I mean, for myself, one of the reasons I write the books I do is because I saw a hole in discourse. I saw that I wrote the books that I wanted to read. And so if you find, the wonderful thing about doing this is you don't have to do this amazing job. All you have to do is find the things you wish somebody was doing. And then instead of just complaining, oh my God, nobody's doing it, it's like, go do it. And that's the wonderful thing about everything being so messed up, is no matter where you look, there is so much great work to be done. Mm-hmm. So those are the things I would say on the personal level. And, well, on the social level too. And so how do we prepare for a time in collapse? I think that we, on the personal level, try to, you know, I think a lot about, since I did a lot of sports when I was younger, I think about what you do when you play defense on basketball or football or anything, mm-hmm. is, you know, you get on the balls of your toes and you're ready to go any direction. And I think the reason you do is because the other person's not predictable. They could go left, they could go right.
So you're saying like stay nimble and stay flexible in light of what's happening.
Exactly. And so you are personally in good shape if it collapses, and you're personally in good shape if it doesn't. Mm-hmm. And then on the other thing I need to mention is, and this is the most important part, is that, you know, I have this dear friend, John Osborne, who has been the heart and soul of, I mean, he's my mentor, and he's really got me into environmentalism. And he always says, when you ask him why he does the work he does, he always says, as things become increasingly chaotic, I want to make sure that some doors remain open. And what he means by that is, if bull trout are still alive in 10 years, they may still be alive in 100. But if they're gone in 10 years, they're gone forever. So it is especially important, as things are collapsing, for us to help the world stay resilient. That ties back to what I said about being conservative, that I want for the world to be resilient, to have coho salmon through this process so that they can help the planet recover. And I want there to be lampreys so they can help the planet to recover. Because every little bit that's missing is that little bit that can't help the world recover from this culture. So that's the most important part, is to defend the world's resilience and the world's ability to stay nimble too.
Mm-hmm. Certainly a lot to take on board. Do you have time for one more question?
Sure.
This will be our last question, because I know you've got to go. So this is a question from Junio Rezende, and he said that he'd like to know from you, when you started your activism more than a decade ago, the situation was not so dire, and even the science was not so clear about what's happening right now. and the killing of the planet. So he wants you to talk about what keeps your activism going and how your activism relates to your own emotional life. And he also would like to know what hope you may have.
Well, I've been doing this work for about 30 years, actually. And I often think that I often wish that things were only as bad now as they were then. And so, yeah, I'm very aware of how much worse things have gotten. And a few things keep me going. One of them is the understanding that if I want to, I can look away, because the disappearing salmon can't look away, and the clams who aren't having babies anymore because the fish associated with them are not there anymore, they can't look away. And so I recognize that I have the privilege to be able to look away. And also I recognize that I have been given, years ago I interviewed a member of the Tupac Amaristas, the MRTA, a rebel group in Peru. And one of the things he said is, on a global level, the fact that you've been taught how to read and write is a huge privilege. That is not true for a great portion of the planet. And if I have a privilege, it is my responsibility to use that privilege to undercut its own basis. And so, when I feel bad about the world, I think, I could be a stevedore in Mumbai. I could be a coal miner in China. I could be, there are humans who have it much worse than I do.
You could be a rice paddy farmer in Bangladesh and be watching your fields go down the river.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that's one thing that keeps me going, is the knowledge that things could be worse for me. And another thing that keeps me going is the fact that if you love someone, you work to defend them. And, this is kind of a dramatic image, but I've been thinking about this lately, that, I'm 57 and my health is not particularly good. And we've all read about like the Bataan Death March, and we've read about various death marches that the people have forced other people to go on. And when I was 20, I probably could have survived one of those. And also I have a really strong will that I would keep walking until my body completely fell apart. No, I wouldn't want to, but if they were going to kill me otherwise. But now if somebody said to me, you have to walk 50 miles today or I'm going to kill you, I'd be like, just kill me now. I mean, I can't. What's the point? I can't do it. But here's the real point, is that if somebody said to me, you have to walk 50 miles today or I'm going to kill someone you love, I would get up and walk, because that's what you do for someone you love.
There you go. And that's the motivator.
Yeah.
We'll do more for the ones that we love than for our own selves.
Yeah. So that's another thing that motivates me. And also, life is just really wonderful. That's the thing, is there are so many environmentalists who think that if you recognize how bad things are, you have to go around being miserable all the time. But that's not true. I'm a complex enough being that I can hold in my heart the understanding that we're really screwed, but life is really, really good. And that keeps me going too. And also, the stakes are so high. We're talking about life on the planet. We're not just talking about one locality getting destroyed. We're talking about the oceans. And 100 years from now, people are going to, if there's anybody still around in 100 years, don't know. If there's anybody around in 100 years, they're going to ask, what the hell was wrong with us that we didn't fight like hell when the world was going down? Oh, I'll tell you another thing too. And this is just corny as hell, but I went out for football in 8th grade. And I liked sports, but this was terrible. I was dreadful, and the team was dreadful. Everything's dreadful. Except I've never forgotten something that a friend of mine who was in 10th grade said to me before I went out. He was older and wiser. And he said, now, if you get tired in practice, just keep pushing it, because someday you're going to look back and you're going to wish that you would have tried harder.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it's corny as hell, coming from a 10th grader to an 8th grader, going out for something as silly as 8th grade junior high football, but it's really true. And that has motivated me to write so many books, because I don't want to die with 5 books still in me. You know, I want to look back at the end of my life and say, I did everything I could, and I could not have done more. And so that motivates me too. And that's not just for that. That's if somebody is a parent, you know, you want to look back and say, I did the best job I could. Or if you are it doesn't matter. And that's especially true when the health of the planet is at stake.
It is. I mean, it's a difficult thing to get your head around, you know, but it's happening faster and faster. And it does bring up this kind of inner drive sort of question. And you really want to know that you have done everything possible, and you've kind of wrapped your energy into it and tried to assist and tried to just be available in this time of whatever you want to call it, you know, crisis and, you know, disintegration of the biosphere and life on Earth. It's a profound time, and, you know, we have to stop being distracted by every single thing that's around us, and kind of take stock and, you know, really see what's going on here, you know.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. Well, Derrick, I know that you've got to go, but it's been such a pleasure to catch up with you today. So thank you so much for spending time with us today.
Oh, thank you. And let's do it again.
All right. That sounds great. Take care.